this and thought,
Please look at
somewhat
the
concerning.
document, get back to me with any changes and suggestions.
Okay. Yeah, definitely like some time to look
Yeah.
it over.
Well, Steve?
No, other than, Greg, in your proposal, you're proposing a 9-minute response time as opposed to the chief's recommendation.
Yeah, I would say, I'm not proposing it, but what I'm suggesting to you is we looked at other documents that were out there, other communities that have done similar things. I've seen that the response times have been somewhat longer than what we've specified. And again, if you're requesting a shorter response time, then it means that ultimately there's a cost to that service.
Right.
And the same thing again with the proximity to the center of town.
Well, actually, the geographic center, I think, is closer to St. Teresa's Church rather than where our current center is. Yeah, I'm, less concerned with that than I am the response time, obviously, in relation to what services we currently enjoy and have, and then what we can anticipate going forward if, in fact, we decide to truly entertain farming this particular service out. So it'll be interesting to see what the proposals come in at. Our current response time is around the 6-minute mark?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's very good.
yep.
That's where you came up with the 6 and 10 minute range?
85%, because obviously,
Well,
there's a few
80
places you can't get there.
No, I read the 85% within 6 minutes, the balance, no
That's right.
later than 10
That's
minutes.
right. There are
the current-
circumstances.
That's what's being provided by the firefighters currently, by ambulance service. Okay.
I just want to state one more thing if I could.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm really not a big supporter of this idea. I mean, I understand why we did it, and I think we have to follow through with the process, but I would hope that our fire department works as we go into mediation this week and we start to move forward in contract discussions, that we find some reasonable way to get this, put this thing behind us, because this, to me, is somewhat concerning. I think it is a reduction in service if we do go this way. I don't care how you look at it. Maybe from a cost standpoint, there may be some cost savings, but I can't imagine there'll be any efficiency savings. I mean, it seems like our local service is extremely efficient, very responsive. I haven't heard any complaints about the service. And I am a fan of ALS, and I really hope we can find a way to make that happen in this town. That's all I wanted to say.
Well,
Thank you, Mike.
Sean?
Michael, I agree. I'm hopeful that we're able to find a way in which our fire department can and will be able to provide ALS service. Unfortunately, up to this point in time, we haven't found a way to make that happen. And I think we were left in a position where we had no choice but to send out this invitation for bids in order to see what we may get in return. I don't want to see a reduction in service. So I'm not a fan of considering a 9 to 12 minute response range time. But I think our hands were more or less tied. I think in the best interest of the community, we had to go forward in this way. But I too am hopeful that we can come to some sort of agreement with our firefighters in which they would be able to provide ALS service to the residents, the people that work in the community, the people that traverse through the community, if they're in need of that service. I think it's a better way to provide the service would be through the fire department. But we need two willing parties to sit across the table and come to an agreement. We haven't been able to do that yet.
Anyone
No,
else?
I agree. I think almost 2 years ago now, it's been almost 2 years, 18 months to 2 years since we ended our contract negotiations with the firefighters, and this subject was brought up as far as ALS and trying to get that implemented, and the potential of us, again, we can't continue to operate, can't afford to continue to operate the way that we are without some additional revenue sources coming in, and ALS is certainly a major part of the solution if we're going to continue to do that. It's been everybody's stated intent and desire to have the North Reading Fire Department to continue to provide the ambulance service to people in North Reading. So it's that continues to be the case. But again, it would be remiss if we didn't take a look at other options that would be available to us, because we can't continue to just talk and talk and talk and not have any of the facts in front of us. So this is part of the fact-finding mission that we're on as far as evaluating how can we deliver the best possible service to the town of North Reading at the most reasonable cost. So it's unfortunate we haven't been able to come to terms, an agreement with the local firefighters union. It's my hope that we will.
Me
And
too.
we'll continue in our efforts to do that, but in the meantime, we have to take a look at other options. So that's exactly what we're doing here. And I appreciate the effort that's being put forth to glean as much information as possible to see what kind of reasonable proposal will come forward. Again, if we farm it out, we don't know that the response time won't be any less or any better. But there are a lot of variables in there that hopefully this will help clarify for us as we evaluate what we're going to do going forward.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Yule?
Yes. Mr. Chair, Mr. Nash seemed to be very optimistic that we could work something out. And I hope as we go forward in these discussions that that optimism will come, he'll carry that optimism with the other firefighters. But I do agree that we have to look at the other options and go forward regardless. So let's hope things can be worked out. Thank you.
Well said. I too, by the way, feel very strongly that we can work out an agreement with the fire union on this issue. It is a little sad that after all the work that was done by the ALS committee, that we've got bogged down in some areas of the negotiations. And there is a negotiation scheduled forthcoming, and tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I believe, and hopefully some progress can be made. We'll talk a little bit about that in executive session this evening. With that, Mr. Beliconis.
Number 3 is a review of the town's fuel accounts. You have a summary sheet which indicates that the two departments which are going to run short are the DPW and the fire department. The estimated shortfall is $18,500, and I would expect that it will be addressed by a reserve fund transfer request to the Finance Committee. So the amount is not a huge amount of money, but it is something that we're closely watching. Next update is concerned. Yes.
With respect to this, have we looked at the gallonage usage as compared to this time of the year, last year?
Fairly consistent with all of the departments on an annual basis.
It is. So
Yes.
this is basically just fuel,
Yes.
additional fuel cost that
Yes.
wasn't budgeted, okay?
Yes.
The police department is not included in this?
Police department is included in the summary, however, at this time, it does not appear as though they need additional monies.
Right, they say that the year-end balance will be a plus of $7,000.
Yep.
So we're using, so they have to be using less fuel this year.
Well, I think they have
Based
less
on
men,
the
Effective
consensus
deployment of the motorcycles.
You have the motorcycles, yeah, you have 2 less men.
2 less men.
No, they haven't had 2 less men. No, don't go saying that. They haven't had 2 less men. They've been staffed the way they are for some time now, is my understanding. 1 less?
Well, it's,
Not-
I think the positive is, it's good that
No,
they
it's
were
good,
able
but
to
you
manage
start
it.
saying things like they're 2 less men. They're not 2 less men. The community gets out in the community and then,
No, my questions were more related to whether or not our actual mileage has gone up as a result of whatever's going on this year, or whether it was directly 100% related to the cost of fuel.
Right, so maybe if I can just try to understand what you're asking is, are you asking if the fire department had an extremely amount of additional calls over this year versus the last several years?
No, it was more of a general question.
Okay.
You know, the fact that the police were within budget and the others over, it
Mhm.
looked to me like it could have been driven more by travel time or
I got you now.
versus
Yep.
the cost of energy, or a reduction in police travel, one or the other. Well, the budget was, we budgeted more than was needed.
Maybe he had a better guess as to what
Yeah,
the
could
price of
be.
fuel was going to be.
Allow me to go to the next item?
Please.
Concerning health insurance, I've met with our health insurance consultant. We reviewed policy renewal alternatives for next fiscal year. As you know, the town is actively soliciting other health insurance providers based upon a competitive proposal. Those are due in this week, and so it's hoped that as part of that process, by opening up competition, we will result in a substantial cost savings. Also, what we're looking at is comparing our current funding with what would happen if we were to go into the GIC. You have a copy of the report. It's quite lengthy, and I'm not going to review it with the board this evening, but there's a report which indicates that given our current enrollment, if those people were to transition over into the GIC, effective 2012, we would see a 10% savings, or about $500,000. And I think that that's pretty reasonable based upon what we thought. There's some assumptions that were involved in that, but the 10% savings for a comparable program through the GIC, but keep in mind that there are some higher payments that are associated with the GIC. It's not necessarily a 100% straight line. The other thing that we're doing is we're scheduling a meeting with the Insurance Advisory Committee next week to apprise them of plan options. Because as the board had met with the health insurance consultant back earlier in the year, there are several alternatives that we want to introduce to drive down costs for next fiscal year. It's imperative that we do that, and this is part of that discussion process.
So when is the consultant going to meet with the employees, or has that been
We're starting next week,
next week?
right,
Next Thursday?
on 31st.
They're going to meet with each employee group, not just the...
Correct. First, we meet with with the Insurance Advisory
Right.
Committee.
And then after that, with each group, so everybody gets the same information. Any questions?
Happy reading. Quite
Did I read the memo correctly that they've also done some analysis in terms of GIC-like plan outside the GIC? Where
Absolutely.
they estimate about a 9.9% reduction
Absolutely.
or savings over
Absolutely.
from this year's premium cost.
And that's one of the critical aspects that's due with the bids that are coming up, is not only looking at renewal of the status quo. We knew renewal of the status quo was about a 10% increase that we don't have money for. But something that's similar in format to the GIC, available through either the town's insurer or one of the other major insurers that exist in the Commonwealth.
And that falls in line with the proposed legislation that's currently
It absolutely does.
percolating up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just the only other item that I have is just a note concerning the task list that I had mentioned in my goals with the board last month. I would ask the board members if we're going to use the iPads, we use something called Slipbox. You can download it onto your iPad, and I will be more than happy to have a discussion with you, each of you one-on-one, in terms of how we're going to do that. Thank you.
Good.
Okay. Next item on our agenda, the FY 2012 budget hearings, and starting with treasurer-collector. And I guess we'll do the treasurer's budget first. Mary Ann?
Hello.
How are you?
Good night. Good night.
So far?
Would anybody like a water? I have some extra waters up here. Please help yourself if you'd like one. Especially Mary Ann, you're gonna be up there for a while, so.
Yeah, congratulations on your unanimous appointment to the Taxation Aid
have a
Committee.
seat.
Without
Have a big
debate.
party
Without
afterwards.
debate. That's right.
Come on up.
It was a landslide.
Good to use you.